The moment the A-10 Thunderbolts slid into formation beside her commercial jet, every passenger thought it was a coincidence. A routine escort. A training pass. Nothing more. But when the woman in seat 14 lifted her eyes from the window and whispered a single call sign under her breath, the fighter pilots froze mid-air like statues carved into the sky. Because that call sign wasn't supposed to exist anymore. It belonged to a ghost. If you love your country and respect your soldiers, hit that subscribe button right now. Her name was Mara Hale, and this flight was never supposed to remember her. Mara had chosen the window seat out of habit, not preference. Years ago, she had learned that people sitting by the window saw danger first. They also saw beauty first. Both mattered. She folded her hands in her lap as the aircraft hummed steadily through 36,000 feet of calm blue sky, pretending she was just another tired traveler heading home. No uniform, no insignia, no trace of the life she had buried beneath civilian clothes. The cabin was quiet in that special way airplanes always are, filled with soft conversations, rustling seatbelts, and the low mechanical heartbeat of the engines. A young couple behind her whispered about vacation plans. A businessman across the aisle typed furiously on his laptop. Nobody knew the woman in seat 14, once commanded airspace with nothing but her voice. Then the shadow passed across the window. Mara's eyes lifted instantly. Two A-10 Warthogs sliced into view, their gray bodies glinting under the sun, flying close enough that she could see the markings on their wings. The passengers leaned toward the glass, phones already rising, excitement rippling through the cabin like electricity. Someone laughed nervously. Someone else whispered, "Are they escorting us?" The flight attendant walked briskly down the aisle, smiling too tightly, assuring everyone that everything was fine. Just a routine military training corridor. But Mara's heartbeat had already changed, because those jets weren't just nearby. They were watching. She felt it the same way she used to feel incoming fire before it ever appeared on radar. A pressure in the chest, a tightening behind the eyes, a quiet voice in her head saying, "This is not normal." One of the A-10s tilted slightly, adjusting position. The pilot's helmet was visible through the canopy. Mara leaned closer to the window, her reflection faintly overlapping the fighter jet. For a moment, the woman she had become and the woman she used to be stared at each other through the glass. Her lips moved without sound. Reaper Actual. The words barely left her mouth. But somewhere inside that cockpit, a pilot heard them anyway. Inside Warthog 1, Captain Lucas Trent felt his stomach drop. The audio channel he thought was dead for years had just lit up with a voice he would have sworn belonged to a fallen legend. A voice that had once guided him through smoke, fire, and survival. "Did you hear that?" his wingman asked. Lucas didn't answer. He banked the aircraft slightly closer to the commercial jet, heart pounding. "Say again, caller," Lucas said quietly into the mic, unsure if he was speaking to a ghost, a glitch, or a miracle. Mara closed her eyes. She hadn't spoken that call sign in 6 years. She hadn't wanted to remember the battlefield, the desert nights, the broken radios, the moment her command had been declared lost in action, the moment the world believed Reaper Actual was dead. But she wasn't dead. She had just walked away. Slowly, she leaned toward the window and spoke clearly, softly, and with a calm that came only from experience. "Warthog 1, you're drifting too close to civilian airspace. Pull back 5 degrees. Your wingman's turbulence is destabilizing the commercial flight." Inside both A-10 cockpits, silence exploded. Warthog 2 immediately corrected course. Warthog 1 followed. The jets shifted perfectly into safer alignment. In the airplane cabin, nobody noticed the subtle correction. But in the sky, 2 fighter pilots realized the impossible. Only one person in history had ever spoken to them like that. Only one voice carried that authority. Only one call sign could stop the midair. "Reaper Actual," Lucas whispered, his hand shaking. "That's not possible." Mara's eyes glistened as she whispered back. "Still breathing, Captain." Lucas felt his chest tighten. "You were declared lost in Kandahar." "I was declared inconvenient," Mara replied calmly. Behind her, a passenger leaned forward. "Ma'am, who are you talking to?" Mara didn't answer, because the sky had already answered for her. Both A-10s broke formation and positioned themselves directly beside the commercial aircraft, wings steady, engines calm, flying like guardians instead of predators. The cabin began to murmur. Phones recorded. Whispers spread. The captain's voice came over the intercom, unsteady but controlled, announcing that military aircraft were assisting with airspace coordination. Mara leaned back in her seat, exhaling slowly. She had hoped to stay invisible. But Reaper Actual had never been good at staying forgotten. Years earlier, Mara Hale had been the youngest tactical air operations commander in her unit's history. She wasn't the loudest. She wasn't the tallest. She wasn't the strongest. But when chaos filled the sky, her voice turned it into order. She had saved pilots who had no fuel. She had guided jets through sandstorms so thick they couldn't see their own wings. She had redirected missiles away from friendly ground teams with seconds to spare. Her call sign, Reaper Actual, wasn't about death. It was about final decisions. When she spoke, outcomes changed, until the mission that erased her. The classified report said her convoy was ambushed. Communications lost. No survivors confirmed. Her body never recovered. The military honored her as fallen. But Mara had survived. She had crawled through fire and silence, carried out by civilians who never asked her name. When she finally returned to command weeks later, she learned the truth. Her last transmission had contradicted a high-ranking directive. She had saved a village instead of prioritizing political optics. Her survival wasn't celebrated. It was buried. So she walked away. She chose a life where nobody saluted, where nobody depended on her voice, where her call sign stayed locked in memory. Until now, inside the cockpit, Lucas wiped his eyes and spoke carefully. Reaper Actual, command never told us the truth. Mara smiled sadly. They rarely do. Why are you here? He asked. I'm going home, she said simply. The simplicity hit him harder than any explosion. The commercial plane hit light turbulence, and several passengers gasped. Instantly, both A-10s adjusted again, stabilizing airflow. Mara watched them like a proud older sister. She wasn't commanding anymore, but the sky still remembered her. In the cabin, a young soldier on leave stared at her with disbelief. Ma'am, are you military? Mara turned slowly. Once, she said. Those jets, they're flying for you. Mara met his eyes gently. They're flying for all of us. The captain soon emerged from the cockpit, pale and respectful. Ms. Hale, he said quietly. We've been informed. You're the reason our flight path is safe right now. Mara stood slowly, every eye in the cabin locked onto her. She didn't raise her voice. She didn't give a speech. She simply nodded. I just reminded them where the line is. The A-10s began to pull away, their mission complete. Before leaving, Lucas transmitted one final message. Reaper Actual, permission to say something off record. Always, she replied. You never died, he said. You just taught us how to survive. Mara closed her eyes, a single tear escaping. Take care of the sky, she whispered. You already did. The jets climbed, turning into silver dots against the blue. Inside the plane, silence fell. Then, slowly, one passenger began to clap. Another joined, then another. Soon, the entire cabin was applauding, not for spectacle, not for drama, but for a woman who had carried the weight of the sky and never asked for recognition. Mara sat back down, hands trembling slightly. She wasn't a ghost anymore. She wasn't a legend either. She was just a soldier who finally allowed her story to breathe. As the plane descended toward its destination, the sun dipped lower, casting golden light across the cabin. Mara looked out the window one last time, not searching for jets this time, but for peace. She had spent years believing she was forgotten. But the truth was simpler. Some call signs never fade. They just wait for the right moment to be heard again. The wheels touched the runway smoothly. Applause echoed once more. Mara smiled quietly to herself. Not because she had been recognized, but because she had finally come home. From which part of the country are you watching this video?